Hello everyone. So today what we're going to be working on is multi-channel sign distance function font rendering. It's MSDF. It's a pretty cool technique if you haven't seen it. So what it entails is pretty much generating one of these images, which we're using this library MSDF gen for. You can see it kind of looks like a sign distance function, but actually it's not. You should go read the paper on the GitHub. It's a really good paper. But in short, the idea is this, right? Because, well, first let's show the problem. Okay, so the problem is sign distance functions are great for lots of stuff. It seems like they're okay for fonts, right? So here's a 32 by 32 SDF, and you can see there's a bunch of artifacts. It gets especially worse if you try to do 16 by 16. For my testing, you pretty much had to approximate like no less than 3/4 the size of the actual glyph. Otherwise, SDF really gives you bad results. So what's really cool about MSDF is like actually it preserves these hard edges in the glyph. So it's able to scale. This is a 32 by 32 pixel image, and I was able to scale it all the way up to like 2000 pixels. And it looks crisp. And pretty much like the whole crux of how this works is exactly described in his thesis here. But really it comes down to this technique where it's like, look, we know that sign distance functions are kind of approximating like circles, shape things. So what happens if we take two of them and do a difference? And you can get that really crisp diamond. And so that's actually what all these colors are for, is like for sort of, it's called edge coloring in his paper. And pretty much you generate glyphs that look like this. And from that, then you're able to preserve all the information that you wanted at a pretty surprisingly low resolution. So then this is like super cheap to run on the GPU. It's also like, I mean, the implementation is kind of complicated, but it seems easier than rasterizing on the GPU directly. And like, this is what the shader winds up looking like. Right, so it's basically just an SDF font with like a little extra stuff. You're taking the median of the colors because the channels don't actually matter in the same way anymore. Like the channels are each their own sign distance function. And so this is like a really, really cool technique. So where we're at today is we've got a font renderer. And this is all just direct write. So the problem is I want to use MSDF when we get to some threshold. So we're going to try to break this down into a few steps. I think first, let's just try to get the font rendering at all with MSDF. And then we'll take it from there. It should be pretty straightforward, but I thought it would be cool to stream. And, you know, I'm hoping to do more streams more regularly going forward. And yeah, hopefully this is enjoyable to someone to watch. Also, kind of selfishly, I just wanted to stream it so I would like focus on the thing and finish it. So, but I'm happy to answer any questions as I'm going. Okay. So, okay. So we only need to get the path of the font. That might be a problem for custom fonts. I'm going to take some notes as we're going. Um, so pretty much all this goes down to this rabbit hole I started a couple weeks back. I had been traveling a bunch, so I haven't been able to work a ton on stuff, at least as much as I would have liked to. But I have this new thing called the font provider. This is the header file for it. It's pretty straightforward. It just makes it so that I can swap out the back end of it and the code can still compile. It's possible the API is like slightly over defined, but really this is the only function that it needs. You can see that when I did the MSDF Gen 1, I was like, you know what, you're just going to pass a font path here. Like, it might have been nicer to not have the user have to manage that directly, but it's really just this call and then this call. And if you want to get information about the stuff, there's some functions here for getting information about the stuff. So it's pretty straightforward. But in order to hand it off to our MSDF gen thing, we need to get a path to the font. So that's exactly what this is going to do for us. And then I think we just call the image and convert it, right? Like, okay. So this is the function where we're actually baking the glyphs. So instead of baking it with the normal path, and we might want to cache this at some point, but you know. We're gonna do that. Then this is, you know, convert MSDF image to image. And like I even started doing the sign distance function thing in here. So, you know, we'll clean this up after we get it working, but I feel like the most important thing is just get it working. So we're baking the glyph. We're shaking and we're baking. I think we want to actually call this image in this context. We don't want to save it to disk. And then we maybe need to get the size for some code down below. Okay. FP get font path. Okay. We didn't actually add this API to our header. So we'll do that. Function does not take one argument. I think it's just the compiler doesn't understand this. Okay. We'll clean this up. I don't know. Maybe that's fine. Okay. So then we get a glyph. And then we're doing like glyph.image. Oh, we lost all the information about the glyph. Because if we look, we actually care about like offset, X advance. So in an ideal world, our MSDF thing would just tell us all that. But we can maybe derive some of that. But I will be back in 5. Quick break. Okay. So for now, we'll just do image. I guess I can just build a glyph, like a dummy glyph. Something like that. Okay, so you can see everything is an A now. So it's lagging because I think we're baking at all those sizes. So temporarily, we're going to just modify this function. Really, we want this to live higher up in the code, but, you know. Subpixel offset also. Ooh, the other thing is at this point, we don't even have the code point anymore. Ideally, we would have a function that's like code point from glyph. For now, we're just going to pass both to this function because whatever. But definitely going to want to go back and clean this up. Code point. So then when we do our actual baking, we can just pass the code point here. Now font size. Don't exactly know what we would want to pass for that. All right, check it out. So it's pretty smoothly animating. Actually, the bug was that these sizes get passed onto the actual glyph. And then we use those in addition to the hash to check. Because we were getting some hash collisions earlier, so I just stuck all the properties on there. So anyway, that's why that's there. So, I mean, this at least works. Except I'm confused about the O. The O character looks a little weird. Like, I wonder if it's not able to split it properly. There aren't really any hard edges in it, but I would be surprised if... I mean, maybe it is correct. Okay, so now we need to update our shader. So the shader should be pretty simple. And in fact, we've already even written it over here. So we just need to add screen pixel range. You need to add this median function. And that. And we need to pass in these parameters. Okay. Right, we don't have a window. We don't really have a good story for setting like custom shader data. So for now, I might just hard code this and then we'll go back and clean it up. Oh, but it depends on the texture width. That's always gonna be 32. Yeah. Okay. We can even just like grab this constant for now. Like from here. Sure. Sure. Texture. Okay, so it's gonna be 90. All right, we got some glyphs. So now the only problem is we need to actually scale this up. Because our texture is baked at one size and like we actually need to render at the right font size. Think like before, instead of doing this like variable thing, I'm just gonna hard code something and we'll go back and clean it up as well. Draw texture. So we get a P0, P1 and then times the scale. Yeah, okay. So in this case, I think scale would just be 256 over 32. Right? No. Well, we don't actually want to scale P0. We only want to scale this. No. Oh, if this is texture size, this maybe is the texture size of the atlas. So actually our constant is maybe messed up. Because maybe it's actually 4096. And that would make our screen PX range this value. Okay, that's starting to look pretty good actually. I don't exactly know why we've got these like borders around everything. Not exactly sure what's up with that. Pipeline. So we are set to the normal blend mode, which should right. So if you set it to a blend mode, it's like we just turn it on for you. So I don't exactly know, yeah, why we have the border. But first I want to even just get the glyphs like at the right size. The problem is all of our algorithms. Can we just change the font scale for everything? I think that will look wrong because glyphs are different sizes. But I'm going to try that. Position, color, anchor. And then we set the base scale here. Like, let's say if I set the base scale to 4. What does that do for us? It's also possible that this is slightly broken. Actually, I mean, I would expect just being able to update the scale to work. I want to test real quick if it's our SDF that's the problem. Like, does base scale work in our original implementation? So let's quickly revert this and do that. And our glyph size is maybe gonna go away as well. Okay. Okay, base scale only changes like the line height, but doesn't actually make the glyphs render any bigger, which is weird. But that does kind of explain what we were seeing. I'm gonna pass the scale through to this. Okay, so that works actually. So yeah, that's like 2x the size. So if we go back to that, re-enable our shader. Okay. Okay. I mean, it is making the glyphs bigger, but they are definitely in the wrong place. Well, maybe not. Also, weirdly, we're not rendering glyphs for... Oh, God, our line height is like insane. I think because our line height is... okay, so our line height is correct. So this is the problem. Our line height is tied to the font size, which is what the user specified. But we actually want to like rescale all of that. Depending on the situation. We kind of need to rework how the scaling works here, because the problem is we're trying to do like two things at once. And that feels like a recipe for bugs. Well, I mean, we have a bug. It's not working. So let's just try to render the glyphs at the right size, and then we'll sort of feed that knowledge back through I also want to disable, we have this like FPS timer. Just disable that. Right. I think also to make our lives a little simpler, let's just do a basic thing. So there's our ABCD. We know we need to, I think it goes up by 8. And I don't know what that means for like our glyph width. It's possible this still needs to be 32. Not exactly sure. Like, cause that, no, that seems wrong. Yeah. Maybe we need to do some reading. Distance field range in output screen pixels. If the pixel range was set to 2, I don't know what the pixel range is. Hey, Pogo Man, what's going on? Do I know how to code in TypeScript? Yes, I do. I've worked professionally on a bunch of freelance projects, and some of those have been TypeScript. Why? Currently working on a project and I'm stuck. Okay. What are you stuck on? I think it all kind of comes down to that range property. I think. So pretty much I need to make a 6502 instruction set for my virtual machine, and I need to write software programs to run it. It's really depressing that TypeScript is the language of choice for that. Like, it feels like it should be C. I have it 90% done, but I don't know how to put it together to run it. I feel like if you don't have it running, that's less than 90% done. I mean, like, it's generally not that helpful in programming to have lots of broken pieces. You want to kind of start from like a working core and like build your way up from that. Unless it was the case that like they gave you a project that's like 90% complete, which I know sometimes CS homework does that. I mean, it sounds like this isn't really a question about TypeScript then specifically, right? If you have a concrete question, I'm happy to try to answer it as best as I can, but I can't look at your whole project. um, do I know how to implement clock pulse? I don't actually know much about the 6502 instruction set. But would you even need to do anything for a clock pulse, or is it just like the rate at which you're running the emulator? Right? Like, it seems like a pretty fun assignment, except for the TypeScript part. I feel like working with bytes is a lot easier in C. Um, you could also maybe check out, there's this other one that everyone talks about. Us to only use TypeScript for the whole semester. It's called like Chip 8. If you've seen the Chip 8 instruction set, they maybe have to do a similar thing with the clock. So, maybe you could look at some people's implementation of that. Yeah, I think that would be a little bit much to like look at the whole assignment and stuff, Like I said, if you have specific questions, I'm happy to answer them as best as I can, but it would take a while for me to figure out what's going on with your very specific problem that you're running into. Look at that beautiful glyph. Okay. So what I'm trying to do is just recreate as best as possible the example I already got working. Because we know it worked over here with this 32 by 32 image. So I want to make sure that we're just doing everything kind of the same as that, and then we'll slowly make changes to make it closer. I think Arial bold. And then when we go to render this A, we're going to use Arial bold as well. Okay, so there's our glyph on the screen. Same as before. So I got into this state before, and the problem was actually just that, like, the scaling factor was wrong. So I'm pretty sure that's what the issue is. I'm so bad at coding. It's my second semester and I'm doing this nonsense. Hey man, I mean, it's okay, right? Like, it takes a long time to get good at this stuff. Like, I've been programming for almost 20 years and I'm still not good at it, you know? I think also like university classes kind of go at one speed, and you're either like ahead of that or behind it, and there's not really any in the middle most of the time. So keep in mind that schools are expecting you to like learn so much in such a short amount of time, but really what you need is just practice doing the thing a lot. Like, it's a deep field of knowledge, but mostly what programming comes down to is like you practicing making things ideally from scratch, because that's when you can really understand everything. So yeah, it'll take time. And like TypeScript, I think, is particularly poor for learning because it has a lot of its own problems that make it harder to understand what's happening. So it's like if you wanted types and you wanted a programming language, you should maybe just pick a statically compiled language like C, because then at least like your code will run fast and the type system's not insane. TypeScript's type system is Turing complete, which means it's its own programming language. Like, you can literally write programs in the TypeScript type system that execute. It's kind of like C++ in that way, where it's like so extra for what it's trying to do. So yeah, I guess all of that is just to say, like, don't feel bad about yourself. Like, learning things takes time, and like, think of it like going to the gym, right? You're not going to be expecting to like bench press 200 pounds day one of the gym. You got to start with small exercises, build your way up. It's tough because like classes are giving you like one target to hit, right? And like you might be good at some things, but just not exactly figuring out what they want you to do. So yeah, I think you should definitely try to be a bit kinder on yourself. Um, it'll take time. But it is important, I think, to develop a mental framework for what to do when you get stuck. Like, look at me right now, right? Like, programming for 20 years. This is not doing what I want it to do. So, how do I figure it out? You got to break it down into small steps, isolate each individual thing, and like test your assumptions. And then you can slowly build your way back up to the full thing. Yeah, I think ChatGPT is not a useful suggestion for writing complex programs. Like, it's fine if you can fully describe the thing to it. But the problem is, like, that's not. The long tail of programming isn't like looking up stuff. The long tail of programming is like you working through concepts that you understand in your own code base. So, I mean, it's possible we'll get to this point where like the context window is like your entire project and then you can ask it questions about your project. But even then, it's going to be confidently wrong a lot of the time. And then you'll have to like have your own heuristics for when you trust it and when you don't. The only two places I've seen GPT being particularly helpful for programming is like exploring a thing you don't know anything about, which even then, like, take it with a grain of salt, look up the concepts separately because a lot of them will probably be wrong. And then writing like unit tests, which are like not interesting pieces of code. So it's really good at doing that. When you can fully isolate your problem into like it's just some pure math stuff, then it's pretty easy. Pretty easy. But the easy things aren't what make you good, right? So, you know, definitely use it as a resource if you find it helpful, but I just haven't found it that helpful for me. I guess put another way, I used to think that there's something I wasn't getting, right, about other people. Um, and actually, this kind of goes two ways because on one hand, you're like, wow, this person's so much better than me. There must be something I'm not understanding. Uh, and I think the main thing is like they just spent a ton of time doing it. Like the thing I wasn't getting was they practiced a lot, they struggled a lot, and they kept going. Um, the other thing, though, is sometimes when things don't make sense to you, it's also because they're kind of stupid things. And that also took me a long time to figure out. Like, oh, this person's had like 5 years of experience or 10 years of experience. Like, surely they must know better than me. And it's like, this must just be a complicated thing. It's like, nope, they made it complicated on themselves. And there was not really any good reason for that. So, yeah, it kind of cuts both ways a little bit. But, you know, just doing the thing and learning how to get yourself unstuck, right? Like I said, it's really important to be able to test your assumptions. And I don't mean with code. I just mean like, what am I assuming about this problem? What's not happening at this step? Oh, is that happening? Oh, okay, it is. Oh, no, it's not. Like, let me figure out why not. And it gets easier the more you do it, right? Like everything. Um, is 90. It's kind of confusing that that's not just working at this point. Let's go back to our SDF test and try to figure it out from that. Oh, right. This should be that. Right. We don't even save the SDFs anymore. Font, get path. Declared but not defined. Why does that matter that it was declared and not defined? Can't it just be fine? Oh, maybe we're actually using it. Yeah. Whatever. Ugh, okay. This is annoying. It's not that easy to go back. So we have to go forward instead. Which is just to say, let's just write our own little thing here. Oh, I think I know the problem. I think you actually need to know the physical pixel coordinates it's going to be drawn on screen. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the issue. It might be still helpful just to test that assumption, but like, because the reason that this one's working with the same calculation is this was rendering a full screen quad. So like, that's why the screen pixel range was the full window width. But here, I don't know why that's not. Okay, but here the problem is we're not rendering a full screen thing. So we could make it render a full screen thing really quickly and just see if that works, right? So when we go to draw glyph, P0 is just going to be, you know, that to OpenAI is useless. Yeah, that's my feeling on it too. I think it can be helpful to explore a space. It's often helpful at like very straightforward things, but otherwise it doesn't help you really understand things. Okay, so 1280 by 1280. I think we just do that. The project is due tonight and I don't know how to fix it. Well, I guess I would start with what's broken about it. Maybe talk to some of your classmates as well, because they would probably have a much better idea of what's going on than me. My code does pulse each line. How do you make it so it pulse one line at a time? Yeah, sorry, I don't really understand the question. And to be fair, like, I've never written an interpreter for machine code before, so I mean, I know how you would do it. I've just never personally done it. Pulses each line one line at a time. Yeah, those two statements almost sound like the same to me. So I'm not understanding the nuance or what the thing is. My code doesn't pulse each line. What is a pulse? Like, it's just like a particular register being set? So when I run npm start, it shows code 1, code 2, code 3 at the same time. And is the idea like it's supposed to pause or something? I have no idea why this isn't working, by the way. It's hard to explain. Yeah, it sounds kind of tricky. I don't exactly know what the problem is, but I also don't exactly know what the thing is. Okay. Wow, look at that crisp glyph. That's what we're trying to get working. And it is possible. I just don't exactly know why it's not doing the thing. Right? Like, look at how crisp that glyph is. So what's up? Why does it work here, but it doesn't work here? feel like the shaders are the same. Doing linear. Oh, wait. Oh my God. Guys. I know what the problem is. This is really dumb. It's our blend mode, or not our blend mode, sorry, our texture sampling. It's, we're doing nearest here. We have to do linear. Which, you know, we need a better story for like, when we actually want to do this. We want to do linear versus nearest. Like ideally that would be a property of the texture itself, like how you want it to be sampled. But at the moment it's at the pipeline level. So that's our problem. I can't believe I didn't spot that sooner, because this was the exact same problem I ran into earlier when I was implementing this function the first time. But you know, sometimes it just bees that way. So check that out. So obviously you can see the sprite in the background is now blurry. And weirdly, like, not padded enough, I guess. I don't know what it's doing there. This might just be a DirectX bug, or I'm not sure. Because I'm pretty sure the texture for this guy is just this guy. And I set the wrap mode to not wrap. Oh, maybe I have the wrap mode on. PD dot. Maybe there's a. I mean, I wrote this API, but I don't remember what all the options are. Okay, I'll tell you what, Pogo Man. If I can get this working in the next 15 minutes, you can send me whatever you want. I'll look at it for 15 minutes. But I do have to go and get lunch soon. I would be down to do another stream later. Try to finish out this font rendering stuff, but... Right. So texture wrapping should be set to none, right? Wrap. So if it's set to none, UV UVW then I don't know what we do. Okay, we default to repeat. I don't know why I want to default to repeat. I think we want to default to clamp to edge. I don't exactly remember what that does. Yeah. Still there's like this like oh, that's just on my screen. Okay. Let's see, clamp to edge versus clamp to border. clamp to border, take the border color at the edge of the texture rather than the average of the border color. I guess we want clamp to border. Because that'll just fill the pixels with black. Okay, so first assumption. So this is what we're talking about, right? Break down our assumptions. First assumption, does the texture size matter? And the answer is no, right? Because look, we get the same result. So texture size doesn't affect our constant. The only thing that affects our constant is the window size and the SDF width. So let's just make sure we're not calling this function and tricking ourselves. We're not. And this is great. I mean, we've got the whole glyph rendering. So now assumption number 2 is, does the window width matter, or does it only matter specifically the size that we're drawing the glyph? So we should be able to test that by doing like 50%. So I don't know. Right? And if we still get a crisp glyph, which it looks like we do, right? We can kind of see that's looking pretty good. Still looks good. I feel like the anti-aliasing is a little bit worse than it should be. You know, like we're kind of getting jaggies here, if you know what I mean. So that kind of makes me think that no, actually the width that we're drawing in is the important thing. So like just doing some quick math here. 1280. That doesn't even make sense at all. Wait, yeah, what? No. What is going on? Okay. What is our window? This is what happens when you hard code stuff. 1280 by 1280. Twelve 80 by 1280 times 1.5. I don't know why that's the constant we're computing here, but get pixel scale. It's just something seems wrong. I can't articulate it. Right? Because like Okay, so we set the size to, okay, this is what's happening. That's really tricky. So we set the size to 1280. My code scales it up to 1920 because it's like DPI aware, and I think it just makes the size of the window more uniform across platforms. But then we multiply it again by 1.5 to get that. So this needs to be the unscaled, like the real size of the window, but unscaled. And then this is the size of that scaled. And the reason that that matters is because now when I multiply this whole thing by 0.5, we actually need to go into the shader here and multiply this by 0.5. Because the width that we're drawing the texture at is smaller, and the anti-aliasing, yeah, that looks correct. So the anti-aliasing needs to take into account, like, what's the actual rectangle we're drawing this glyph in. So that looks pretty good. Okay, Pogo Man. I think I'm at a good stopping point. If you want to paste a link to something, I will be happy to look at the link and maybe I can be helpful. But it's tough because there's a lot of context that I don't know. I'm willing to look at something for like, yeah, 20 minutes or so. But I'm going to get more coffee. This does kind of present a problem. And the problem is that each glyph is actually going to be a different size. I don't know how much that's going to matter because they're all like similar sizes. So you might not be able to notice. Like we would have to kind of rework our pipeline a bit to bake in the size of the glyph itself. Well, actually you could compute it because we have the UV coordinates and we know the size of the actual image. So never mind. Yeah. They even maybe have an example on this. Distance fields pixel range. Texture size of the MSDF. No, yeah, our texture scale doesn't vary. Um, so this is actually not window width. This is like glyph width in window. Space. So I think there's a way with DirectX to get like the texture size. Shader, get texture size. I want to do it in the shader. No. Get dimensions. That sounds promising. Object.get dimensions. MIP level with, wait, what? No, this sounds like, well, whatever. We already know the size of the texture. This was just to make it a little bit more. Okay, if this doesn't work, we're going to just do the thing we know works. They're just saying pass in the texture size. It's annoying because I think in OpenGL you can just get the texture size. You know? But what are we going to do? So, okay. So we know our float2 size is going to be 4096 by 4096. And so then the glyph width in scaled space. So yeah, okay. Well, we still need to know something. So we would have to actually compute this up here. Because we have the input text chords. Oh, but this gets called per vertex. Yeah, all right. That's not going to work. It's fine. We'll just leave it as this for now, but, you know. I don't know. Hard coded. So can we just undo our changes and do we get nice crisp glyphs? Or is this still kind of broken? I think it's still kind of broken. Just because our spacing is going to be off, right? But if we try to render ABC, I mean, we do get pretty crisp glyphs. So that's great. I'm a little concerned about O. But that also looks totally good. And I was a little bit concerned about Q. And then the other thing I was concerned about was like Japanese characters. Because they're going to have like a lot. Okay. All right. So I think we have a pretty clear set of steps here for going forward. I'm just going to write them down. So when we pick back up in a few hours, we will hopefully be able to finish this out today. Okay. So we want to fix font layout to use scale properly. Then we need to like actually update the shader constant. And then the last thing we need to do is like, you know, fall back to either approach. All right. And that's pretty much it. Any final questions before we wrap up? If not, well, thank you everyone for coming by. And yeah, we might stream some more later. Hoping to get this done today. So until then, have fun programming, everyone, and see you later.